Namaskaram, Akka. Namaskaram, and a very good evening to all of you gathered here. What a fine evening it is to talk about the life of Srimati Rukmini Devi Arundel. A beautiful Friday evening when the full moon shines brightly in the sky, and as the month of Aipasi fades and paves way to the month of Karthikeyan, a befitting coming together of Shakti and Shiva.
Wow.
And here we are to talk about the life of none other than an instrument of the divine, Srimati Rukmini Devi Arundel. Rukku, as she was fondly called, was born on February 29, 1904, on a leap year in Madurai during the Mahamagam festival. She was the sixth of 8 children born to Sri Neelakanta Shastri and Sheshammal. Her early years were spent in the districts of Madras Presidency, where her father was posted as an engineer. As a child, she was loving, patient, and a dreamer. Her sister Visalakshi fondly recalls how Rukmini Devi used to sing funny songs and would do some wonderful mimicry of people. She was married to George Sidney Arundel in 1929, a theosophist and a family friend, much to the public outrage, especially from the Madras Brahmins. She then came under the mentorship of Annie Besant, and it was after the meeting with Anna Pavlova that she was inspired to learn to dance. In 1936, Rukmini Devi went on to establish Kalakshetra, an academy of the arts, which grew and flourished and attracted sincere seekers and students from all parts of the country. An avant-garde in every sense, Rukmini Devi created a wealth of dance dramas and solo compositions. Apart from her invaluable contribution to the art, she was also instrumental in the passing of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act in 1960, and she was the president of the Indian Vegetarian Congress in 1957. Akka, as a student of the arts, right from the time when I've set my eyes on some pictures, very beautiful pictures of Atte, and I've heard some stories about her and witnessed some of her classic dance dramas, and I've heard you say some anecdotes about Atte. And I've had the chance to delve a little deeper into her life the last few weeks. I feel that she is a personality who exudes dynamism so effortlessly, but has a passive serenity about her. She was a speaker who was outspoken and honest, but there is a sense of palpable silence in her speeches. She was a theosophist, but a practical one. And most importantly, she was an artist who emphasized on the spirit of art rather than its mere form and technique.
Absolutely.
I have always wondered how she wore these many hats so gracefully. Do you think there was one point or one source from which all these branches of that magnificent tree came forth from, Akka?
Yes, of course. I think she had an innate sensibility, a source of, I'd say, a philosophical source point from which it seemed that she did everything that she ventured to do. She was very bold. As you know, in her lifetime, she did things which most people of her ilk could not even dream of doing. She did them without any, I don't think she doubted that she was capable of doing it, not because she was doing it, but because she believed in what had to be done. But I think it came from a very deep source of introspection and a certain inner resolve. And that I think came from a philosophical pool, which obviously she was endowed with. Yeah, I'd say that was a common something common to whatever she did. There was kindness, because, if you're in the arts, but you're also kind to every animal on the street, then there's it comes from a singular energy point, not I have this for this and that for that. No, I think the need to educate in a way that was different from the times. All these things came from a belief, a belief in what India stood for, what India might go back to. Yeah, because you have to remember that everything that she did was it was colored by the surge of desire of every Indian at that time, or every thinking Indian, for independence. So if you see from the time she was born to 1936, we still hadn't got our independence. But it was in the air, and there were movements, actual movements now that were, in fact, Annie Besant was at the head of a very big movement to give independence to India, though she was a Britisher. And she was the ideal of many people like her father. So when they retired, they moved to Adyar, only to be in the atmosphere of Annie Besant's work and Annie Besant's the things she was talking about at that time. And one of the big things that she was talking about was a return to our consciousness of who we were, our ancient texts, our need to be independent of, a foreign yoke. And for Atte, that meant a return to the ashram setting, the way a child can grow up in a very natural Gurukulam. So the education system that she had been put through was something that she didn't particularly like. And she resisted it, and it's just her thing. It was like just something that, so when the opportunity came and she came into the right place at the right time, and she was with all these very, very dynamic people, then it just, came out of her, came out of what she was wanting to do, much before the desire to dance came, actually.
So the seed was sown when she was a child, is what we understand.
Yes.
And among the many qualities that was instilled in Atte by her parents, one very distinctive quality that I found was the discrimination in arts. I read about how her father would discourage them from watching certain plays and presentations because they lacked in taste. And this is very evident in her choices, in her works. And you are someone who has watched Atte in very close quarters. So how is it to watch her, did you know that she was impressed or unimpressed with just with her facial expressions? Or how was it to just observe how sensitive she was to the most minute of nuances to major decisions in life? And how has it impacted you as an artist?
I think, guessing what a guru is thinking is always it's always a bit of a guessing game. I don't think they, no, sometimes they show it and that's as it should be. But sometimes it's, she was far beyond our, we were children and we had no idea of her thought processes and how, where she was at any given time in her mind. So she also inspired a kind of, inspired you to be a better person, a better individual within yourself. She didn't want you to be like her or like X, Y, or Z, but just to rise above yourself and be that other person. I think that she didn't do it by saying it, but she just by example, So your question about her aesthetics is a very important one, because her father was a Sanskrit scholar. He was he was an Advaita scholar, and he read to them. He read the Ramayana in Sanskrit to them in the evenings. Her younger brother Subramaniam, or Papa as he was called, and Visalakshi, who was a younger sister just next to her, they three spent more time with the parents than the older ones. The older ones had already started working and gone to different parts of India to study or abroad. But these three children stayed with the parents for the longest time. So I think the influence of their mother Subbulakshmi and their father was very strong on their characters. And the father was particular. He was the chief engineer in Pudukkottai district, and the Maharaja was very keen for the Dasara festivals and all. So he'd give each of his officers something one day to decide what the people would like to enjoy on that day. And of course, some people brought the circus in, and some people brought comedians who were rather crass, and the children loved them, and of course, people loved it. But her father was particular, and he said, he I think talked to them about how you should view good or bad art, and what you might present instead, So he talked a lot about those things, about the level of the literature that you might, that we are the inheritors of, and why not those stories, and what about the mythology. And so I think she was sensitized by that, but also by her mother's singing at home. She sang Carnatic music. She was not in a professional way or anything, but she had studied it, of course. There was a connection, of course, also to some very great Vagyakars, but for them, she sang it and hummed it all the time while she was working and in the house. So there was that other thing happening as well. And I think Rukmini Atte took it upon herself as a little girl to be the caretaker of all the calves and the cows and the animals in people's houses. She would go and worry about them and feed them, and put something. A mother would help her to make a kashayam to put on their bones. So she was already, like that, a dreamer, somebody who was not going to do the normal thing, but just be herself and be her own maker, in a sense. Yeah.
Akka, this is just out of curiosity. Do you think this discrimination can be cultivated consciously, by conscious
What
effort?
discrimination between good
and bad?
Can it be cultivated by?
Consciously, as youngsters,
absolutely.
as young artists.
Not only consciously, but I think with a little help from society and your family and parents and your genes and your sanskara and what you've inherited, of course, but by your education and by who you listen to, who you pay heed to, what your instincts are. So these definitely, but I think you also from time to time need some guidance, and that guidance can come from a philosophical base also. I think the thing that's missing is the reading of or having an anchorage in some philosophy of some kind, because I think living a life without a philosophy is almost you have no anchoring, and you don't know. But if you had, like she did, she was very drawn towards some kind of inner resource, and I think she gave that to us also. She said that read as much as you can, any religion, any scripture, any poetry, anything that is of a high order. She had an amazing number of beautiful books, and she encouraged the children to read. And I think that is what holds you steady, whether you're doing this job or that job. It doesn't matter. The person who's in the totem working there, they have, in fact, they have a philosophy. It's us who lack it. Yeah.
And this reminds me of how she hardly saw difference between theosophical activity and dance. For her, it was all interlinked, and it was all the same.
Totally. In fact, before India's independence, Annie Besant must have asked her what she wanted to do and said, "You have to do something. You kids, you all have to do something." And they said, "Okay, we'll go to the villages around, you know, outside or just beyond Chennai, obviously, in Tamil Nadu, and we'll talk to the villages, we'll talk to the people about hygiene and, you know, and also about not killing and sacrificing an animal outside the temples, which is what she had already heard about. So she was a little older, and she got onto a bullock cart with quite a few only the young people, and they went off to these villages, and they made it their business to teach them how to look after their children, keep clean, and the women, how to look after themselves during their period and after and all that. And then also sang bhajans, but the bhajans were words that talked about your hygiene and talked about not sacrificing the animal rather than, I mean, it was a common bhajan at that time, and the name of the deity obviously came, but they put in these charanas, which actually I think that was rather nice. But again, part of that whole freedom, upsurge and that freedom struggle and that need to be contributing to the country in any small way that you could. So all the welfare of the animals, all the welfare of the people, these little children handled. And Annie Besant kept a very tight, kept them in the sense that I think you had to come back and report what you did and where you did it and all. It wasn't just random, so they worked and they learned how to work towards a goal. Yeah.
I remember reading this incident about Atte cooking a meal for Annie Besant, and she would come home, and when she was offered to sit down, Annie Besant would say, "No, that's not Indian culture.
It's not your way." Yeah.
Yeah. And Rukmini Devi attributes all her, even the approach to dance to her learnings from Annie Besant.
Yeah, it contributed to her philosophy and her. I think it lifted her up actually, because what happened was she was brought up in this very small, small villages and towns around wherever her father traveled. They traveled mostly on bullock cart, two of them, and they would go and camp near a riverside or wherever he had his work. So from that, you see that she comes to Chennai. Absolutely, I mean, really not educated in the real sense. And she suddenly is running around the TS grounds, which is the Theosophical Society was one of the most vibrant, institutions in Chennai at the time. And the fact that she could see these people in white robes, and there were lectures and there was talks, and so obviously they picked up, but people would be quietly disciplining them or telling them, listen and hush and don't talk now, this gentleman is talking, or so this kind of thing about what Annie Besant instilled in the people around there. But she was involved in the most fiery political battles, and her whole fight for India's independence was not a small thing. It was a very, very big segment of our history, but we unfortunately don't talk about it too much. But she was one of the pioneers of that. George Arundel was one of three others, along with two others. They got imprisoned in Ooty because of their work towards that and the publication of protest and this kind of thing. So it was not just philosophical thought, and no, there was a lot going on at that time. And her eldest brother Sriram, was helping with as later he became editor of the magazine, but he was with Annie Besant on all these very vibrant political churning that was happening. So they were not going to be just delving into the scriptures, and which they were doing, of course. But there was this other, at that time, it was India's freedom that was most important.
So that brings me to the next question. Why was Kalakshetra even established? Why was there an idea of the Academy of Arts? And I'm reminded of a beautiful passage from the book. And with your permission, may I please read it,
Please.
Akka? I think this beautiful discussion happens after her performance at the Golden
The
Jubilee
first performance, yes.
Convention for the Theosophical Society. This chapter is titled An Academy of Arts. The idea of a center of art at Adayar came up later that night as a small group of friends contemplated the event and its significance. They pressed upon Rukmini, crowned with authority by her achievement, the desirability of creating such an academy. There was anticipation that, with the blessings of the leaders of the Theosophical Society, Rukmini Devi would lead the revival of the sacred dance form. It seemed a logical step forward in the society's vision of a revival of India's heritage and culture as part of the struggle for independence. The president, George Arundale, was enthusiastic. He saw his wife as the ordained instrument of a new and extraordinarily potent revelation of spiritual reality through art. Exactly a week later, on 6 January 1936, Rukmini Devi established the International Academy of Arts at Adayar.
Yeah.
So was Kalakshetra just meant to be an institution to learn music and dance?
No, not at all. If you look at the scene at that time, there were many things happening. I think what is hidden is far more important to look at. You see, there was great protest when she wanted to dance. So it was volatile. It was volatile protest. So there was this whole caste thing, and should a person of her caste perform an ancient art form that belonged to this country but was now in the hands of another caste group, who felt that it was very much there. Then there were the Natvanars and all the resistance to coming and teaching her and accompanying her, and the whole debate was going on about, people had heard some rumors of her learning, and so there was agitation a little earlier to her marriage first to Arundale, and then some years later, now she had grown up and she had already traveled to Australia and places like that. She had imbibed instruction in theosophy from some very great masters, and she comes back to India having learnt the basics of ballet from Cleo Nodri, who was one of the principal dancers in Pavlova's company. And she had no inkling, I think, about this dance thing. There was nothing that even the family or anybody would have even guessed that this might have happened. So, having been introduced to it, Anna Pavlova says to her, why are you, it's fine, you're learning this art form, but why don't you look at your own art form? And I think she might have mulled over that whole idea, why can't I learn an Indian form? And so when the teacher came and she went and saw, these two sisters dancing at the music academy, and she was absolutely bowled over. She couldn't believe what she had seen. She came back, and her brother Yagnaraman took the trouble to go and ask their teacher, Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai, if he would come and teach her in the Theosophical Society. There was a lot of, the males, her brother and he and Kettappa Pillai and all these people, they talked about it. They must have had to decide how to broach this thing. It wasn't just something that happened. There was a lot of resistance. And ultimately, he came secretly and started teaching. And then he also gave a warning that, you're from a good family. I can't scold you. I can't treat you harshly. But I'm warning you that I'm not a kind teacher. And this is not an easy form. And she was not young anymore. But when he saw her dedication and her passion and her discipline, and she would practice everything that he had taught her. And unlike the other people he might have been teaching at that time, for her everything was absolutely new. So there was a different approach, notating and writing and absorbing, and then finding out from the scholars in the Theosophical Society what this sahityam and that. So she was obviously approaching it from different angles, and because she was also well connected and things like that, but it was must have been all under wraps. It was very quiet. Nobody was allowed to come to the class or see her. I remember Dr. Padmasini saying that she tried to peep into the class to see, she was also a little girl, tried to peep in to see what she was doing, and they shooed her away and said, no, it's because they were so afraid of what parents in the Theosophical Society also would say. And so having had a taste of what it could be, and then, learning how to express this beautiful sahitya and the varnam and all that, she suddenly, she must have felt that this is absolutely beautiful. And this is something that I would like to do. But not just me, I'd like to, share it with others. And why can't others learn it? And why can't the kids, it be part of their education? So I think after she performed, when they saw that she was drawn towards a kind of spiritual sahitya, and her approach was somewhat bhakti bhavam, if you'd like to say, she had that way of expressing it that was not the kind of sahityam they chose, and everything was a little elevated, you might say, in terms of its import. Then I think her friends, and these were not just, they were not Indians, they were mostly foreigners. There was the great poet was there, and there was her husband and people like that. They said, you must, it's been so successful, your program was so appreciated, and people have changed their opinion, and why don't you start something? So it was something that, was a natural outcome of her having, because she was not going to be performing. It was not that she wanted to be the performer or the next best dancer in the country. I don't think that was but her aim was again that whole thing of education and the girl child, and dramas. She had been doing dramas forever. I mean, she was in the Theosophical Society. She had been involved in producing several dramas, not in dance, speech plays, because Annie Besant herself performed in many of them to raise funds for whatever work they were doing. George Arundel, was played a part.
What were the themes, Akka, of?
They would take Hiawatha, Edwin Arnold's plays and things like that. So they took again very, very. Harinie Chattopadhyay was there. He would read poetry, and there were many people who were involved at that time in this whole. They were devotees of, in a sense, they were followers of Annie Besant. So they came to, participate, and they were young. They were the younger people, let's say in their 20s. So they would busy themselves with putting on the entertainment for the people during the convention and things like that. And she suddenly became the center of it, because she, from time of when she was very little, she was very much part of this whole thing of storytelling and mimicking and acting. And she was very quiet, but her sister would say that suddenly she'd become another person, and she would be mimicking somebody or the other, some teacher they met or some man in the. So she had that ability to make everybody laugh, and I don't know how they looked upon it, but that was her. So she, in the Theosophical Society, she began to, lead that whole thing. And you can see that the things that they chose were plays that were, the story of Buddha, for instance. So they would do these things. And they were well done. And she would choose any man or any woman whom she felt in the thing. And she mentions that she didn't choose them because of their acting prowess, because that she had no idea whether they would be able to do it or not. But she chose them because of their swabhavam. So if somebody seemed like he seems like a peaceful man, let's put him in this role. And that he seems like a slightly devious person, let's put him as a villain or whatever. It was more that than their acting. And poor things, they were very awkward in their roles, but they did it and everybody loved it. And but Annie Besant herself was a great orator. She joined in sometimes. Arundel joined in. Krishnaratnam sir was there. Shankara Menon was there. His brother Narayan Menon would join. Lot of people. Yeah.
You were speaking about how Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai resisted the offer to teach Atte.
Yeah, he was reluctant. He was scared.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was very scared because they knew who she was by then. They knew that the aristocrats in Chennai had opposed her wedding very much, but they were also the same people who socially met with Dr. Arundel and Annie Besant. They would like to be part of the Theosophical, Society's works. The fact that this Pavamana or Brahmin girl was married to this rather elderly gentleman, however wonderful he was. He was a very attractive person and people loved him. So they couldn't wrap their heads around that. And that was, so I think Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai knew that and didn't want to, he didn't want to get into any trouble with that issue. He knew he was teaching the first ever Brahmin girl how to dance. So he was awkward. And then she was in this beautiful place where there were foreigners there. And also, you can imagine him coming from Pandanallur and seeing the atmosphere there. And, I mean, I don't think he could have said, makku. I think he would have hesitated to say that, though I'm sure he would have been tempted to. Yeah.
So there is this passage in the book, and I would like to read it, Akka. So this is, again, Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai's response when he was approached to teach Rukmini Devi. He says, I do not feel inclined to do so. You are a rich lady, a society woman, and from the Brahmin community. Dance for you is only a pastime. It will not be a profession like it is for those I teach. Their life is hard. I'm very strict with them. They work 7 to 8 hours a day. If they do not dance properly, I'm severe with them. I cannot do all this with you, and so I do not want to teach you. And what was very interesting was Atte's reply to that. She says, do not imagine that I'm just a dilettante wanting to learn for a few hours with you and wishing to give a dance recital. This is not what I want. I want to learn from you as you've taught the others. You can give me as severe a training as you've given them. I'm not doing this in a casual way. I want to be a good dancer. The elderly man listened but gave no reply, only promised to think it over and left. From being such a passionate student of Bharatanatyam, was she in her late 20s, Akka, when she started learning?
Yeah, even older, slightly older, I think, yeah.
And to creating something what we call now as the kalakshetra bani, could you tell us what the bani signifies, Akka? Because I've always understood that Atte was more keen on the spirit of the art than just settling with the form and the technique. And she believed that surrendering to the dance and surrendering to the deity makes the dancer transcend the physical, transcend the body. And quite ironically, when we think of the Kalakshetra Bani, it is the sense of Shuddha, of the Sharira that comes to our mind first. So I'm just curious to know if Attai's intent behind structuring such a Bani was beyond the physical. What is your take on it, Akka?
I don't think you can be a dancer and get away from the physical. So the idea of surrendering and the idea of bhakti and the idea of spiritual impetus, it's all, I think you have to put that aside first. Modala and this body has to be trained, which is what she did. She went about it. In fact, she already had ballet training. At also, I mean, 16 is rather old to start ballet. So even there, she must have struggled with her muscles and her understanding of balance and form and, you know, the way they stretched their bodies, and very alien to her coming from Madurai, you know, to suddenly be doing stretches on a ship on the way, you know, to Australia. So, but she was fascinated, and she was, and then she did it very seriously. She took a lesson. Now you come back and you cut to this form called bharatanatyam, which suddenly blew her mind, and she learnt the adavas. She learnt the hard way. She learned to do a complete margam. And in that process, I think she instinctively realized that the application of a certain not balletic technique, but a certain way of holding the body up and you know, instead of slouching, for instance. And this whole thing of a correct form, the idea of, she saw that the form had the potential to be extremely beautiful, but also it required very tedious muscle control and things like that. And I think that came very naturally and very innately. It was not something that she thought about. I'm not sure that she but I think she was, she got excited about the whole thing of teaching it and how do you teach it. And so she thought that if there were two little children there, I would have to have some pedagogy. You can't just teach them an alaripu, which is almost like a huge philosophical statement, no? It's alaripu is not a, but people taught it like that. Alaripu choli koduthudalam, appuram jatiswaram appuram. But they were not. These items were complex, and you had to know music, you had to know vaipattu, you had to know what swaras meant, what's tala, how do you put it together. You got to study all these ingredients, and immediately the pedagogy became apparent to her, is that the adava has to be broken down, you have to have groups, you strengthen the muscles of the calves and thighs by doing a whole lot of adavas, literally doing just tattadav and natadav for almost a year is what she imposed on her kids. She didn't have that luxury, but she knew, because her knees were giving way very soon after she started performing. So she knew that it was because of that lack of, you know, but if you started with the child early and taught them the correct way of building up their muscle toning and all, along with the other thing, then they would be very strong dancers. So I think the so-called kalakshetra bani, which she never named, by the way, others call it the kalakshetra bani. It's not a separate bani. It was the Pandanallur bani, if you like. And what does the Pandanallur bani mean? It means that veteran masters from Pandanallur taught that bani. But they already had a very strict adherence to form, good form. It was already intrinsic to that style. So I think what she did was just insisted that certain things must, or that there could be. If they just did this, then she would. It's just that little difference. And when you look at the form, you realize that it has potential beyond the obvious. And you have to be able to see that potential and then work towards that potential. You can do this like this, you can also do it like this. So there are, you know, it's just how much you put into it. And I think the kalakshetra, so-called kalakshetra bani, and that good form came out of that intuition and that desire to see it being very beautiful. She was very fond of ritual, and I think that whole thing of doing it again and again and doing and making it better and polishing it and then sweating over it, and it was part of that understanding that if you do something again and again, then you. And she was reading, and she was exposed now to art from all over the world, and she had seen all the beautiful things that there were to see in Rome and in England, and her husband introduced her to so many books and beautiful music. He would play to her in the evenings. He would play the piano, teach her how to appreciate symphonies and how to appreciate the different parts of their music, Western music. So she was being exposed at various levels to various things, and she applied that knowledge to what she was given. And when she was given these very beautiful, she knew that this was what she wanted to do, because she was from Madurai. She knew that this sahityam and this part, because it was connecting her to her roots. You can see that happening. But that they had to be expressed in a refined way, in a very with understanding, with opening up the Sahitya and reading it, learning the poetry, learning the swaras, learning music, theory, how to put talam, what is the kanaka. And so I think the course just emerged over time. In the beginning, Chokalingam Pillai sir and Dandayuthpani Pillai sir were teaching and taught exactly as they would have taught in their homes. But very slowly, after about 4 years, when some people got trained, then she said, well, let's look at the Abhinay Darpanam. Can we teach them Patakas Tripatako as well, which is not part of that training? Or can we teach them how to say a jati properly instead of, not so well, but that they should have, then they would say, no, let's teach them how to say tadinnam, takuntari, ketataga. So I think this whole thing of does education belong to everyone is reaching out to the literally the sotta of this land. Is it for everybody, or is it only for a particular community? And even in that, where the different parts were segregated, the music, the cholakatte, the imagining the item, composing the jatis was all very belonged to different people, and only they could do it. But she said the understanding should be with, or could be with every child. So the course began to include these little things. And then, of course, the bhajane and the bhajane sampradayam was always taught. It was part of our training. And then the whole routine, getting up early and living in like an ashram. You washed your own clothes. You had very few. You weren't allowed to have more than 3 sets of clothes. You washed one, you wore one, and you had one. So that was it. But whether you were a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, you had to look after your things, eat on the floor, you slept on the floor, you danced on the floor, sang on the floor. It was good. It was a good, taught you how to bear pain and how to sit up erect. I think we can look at some pictures. There's a lovely picture of some little children sitting under a tree doing theory. And you'll see how even at that very young age, they're sitting absolutely erect. It's actually just so wonderful to see just that. They've got their eyes closed. There's a very young Chinnashada teaching them. These were just children in and around Adyar who came. So they first were theosophical people, their children or grandchildren who came to the class. I think she was so they were very lucky.
Yeah.
Because they got the early dhyanam, like they might have done Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya or something, and they just taught them how to sit well, do some yoga, do some breathing, pranayama, things like that. So I think for her that was a return from the British schools that had been set up in India to a return to the ashram and the Gurukula system, where you learned how to show respect to your elders. Maryada was an important thing, but elders helping the little ones, and that whole thing of akka and anna's seeing you through your journey. That was very special. You weren't walking alone. You always had somebody to look up to. Oh, avaroda nanna irukku. Now I want to do it like this one day. Oh, that akka, she has a very nice jump. I'm going to jump like her. This thing of aspiring. And she used to say that if you can inspire even one person to one thing, then you've achieved something in life. So she would tell us, be an inspiration to the one next to you. If you practice, I think there was once an issue about this thing of practicing, whether the children should practice in the evenings. This senior dancers practice in the evening with unguided attention, with a teacher not present. ஏதாவது ஒன்று பண்ணிடுவாங்க, தப்பா பண்ணிட்டே இருப்பாங்க. அப்போ என்ன, she said, they have to, the seniors are there, and the seniors can be practicing as well, and they can turn their attention to a young person and say, அது இப்படி பண்ணி பாரு, இது தப்பு, சரியா இல்லை. So it became that sort of thing where it was guided, but there was, the seniors were taking some responsibility. Very handsome guy, coming to think of it. That's Tiger Varadacharya. That's Ramaswamy Iyengar sir. And this is, of course, Atte. This was the beginning of Kumarasama, where he was composing it for her. He was also her Vadyar, Patta Vadyar. Actually, she was drawn towards music and not, more than dance. Yes. She was basically her heart, I think, was in music. And this Papanasan Shivan, whom she loved dearly. She just adored all these veteran old people. And I think it's something that you need to look at, is that, it's something I've always wondered about, is how she drew these people who people had forgotten about. Whether it was Vasudevacharya, he was already 90s. He was in 90s when he came and composed the entire Ramayanam for her. So talking about picking him up from an impossible, but she didn't see that as an impediment. He's a scholar of the Ramayanam, I want only him. And she gave him a home, and where now that big school has come up, where our school used to be Western School, the main house there was for him. And Rajaram sir, who was a very young grandson, came to look after him. And he started composing. Tiger Varadacharya came. This is them. This is when Annie was, that's Adyar Lakshman sir in the middle.
Oh.
The little boy, yeah. So he and his brother Ramu came from, so she asked the Patvadyas to bring somebody they find who needs, to be looked after, and also who'd like to learn and all. So and somebody found them singing bhajanas in a temple where their home was. And they were very, humble. And so she brought the two brothers, and then she looked after them, and they learned from the greatest Vagyakars of the time. Imagine learning from Tiger. It was just unheard of, Buduru Krishnamurti Shastrigal and people like that. So this is her and Ramaswamy Iyengar sir, learning from Tiger. She took her music lessons. What we have heard is that she took them very, very seriously. She sang beautifully. She wanted, I think, in her heart, wanted to be a singer rather than a dancer. But she knew also she wouldn't be able to dance. She would, that time had got crossed.
Akka, speaking of her inclination to music and literature, Atte was instrumental in bringing new compositions to the Margam. Even though she was an adherent and admirer of the Margam structure, she brought in compositions that were rich in literary merit and bhakti bhava. Could you talk to us about that and her, expanse of solo compositions which she choreographed, and how was it? Did she alter the choreography to suit each student? Speaking of pedagogy, and how did it work?
So first of all, if you look at the kind of items written for dance, which is tremendous. There's just a massive ocean of work that was amazingly, I don't think any other country have poets and Vagyakars written for dance. I don't know how this happened, but I'm just so happy it did. But it's an amazing thing. I have to say that dancers are not conscious of that amazing thing that has happened. So there was that music, but there was also an ocean of other music that was not being touched by the dancers and the Natwanas. They did that margam, which had been decided upon, and they did kautvams and a bit of. But otherwise, it was that varnam, padams, javalis, tilana structure. When she came into the dance, she was learning music. She could see that there was a whole lot of other songs, which were kritis, kirtanams, Devarams, this, that, so many wonderful things which could be used and would be most appropriate according to her. And why could she not do a dance on Lord Shiva, for instance, a Kirtanam on Lord? So, Natanam Adinar, which was not part of the repertoire, I believe, was brought in because she really felt that it was such a beautiful sahityam. It just told the story of why Shiva danced, what happened when he danced, literally. So I think she felt that it was appropriate. It started with something like that, or she would take a Tyagaraja Kriti and she would perform it. She, of course, was very drawn towards Dikshitar, and she did things like Mayamma and things like that. So I think the music drew her. It was the ரொம்ப உச்சித்தமான ஒரு மியூசிக்கான she was drawn to it. And she felt that, what does the dancer have to do? The music is so wonderful. So she started, but I don't think she imposed that on the students. That was not taught in Kalakshetra. They learned what Chokalingam Pillai sir and Dandapani Pillai sir taught them, which was the margam. And they did the Manavi and the Rupam Jutsi and all, which was taught. I spoke to Pushpaka just yesterday. I was trying to distract her from some pain she had. And I said, so what did Dandapani Pillai sir teach you? And she said, Avardhane Rupam Jutsi Zoli Kurta. So we're talking about they were not conscious of what Atte's journey was, where it was, because by then she was very busy with other things. But she kept an eye, must have kept a very strong eye on what was happening. And some of the junior people who had got trained were taking the early classes of Tattadava and Natadava, where they must have been making little changes and introducing a little theory and all that sort of thing. Part class ku ponom, ellarum dancers vandu vai paattu kattukonom. In fact, she insisted that if you wanted a diploma in Bharatanatyam, you had to get not just a first class in your dance, but you had to get a first class in music to get it. So because of that, willy-nilly, we became fairly decent singers. But she said that was what was going to make you a better dancer, and she was right. I totally agree with that point of view. I think one of the problems we have now is that we have a lot of dancers who want to do wonderful things, but they don't have any knowledge of the music. So they're very poor for that. While if you take, Sujata is here, so I can say people like Lakshmi, they were soaked in music, and that's why they were, better dancers in terms of their abhinaya delineation, because they knew the music from within. So knowing the sahityam is one thing, but feeling the music and feeling what was coming next in the raga, alapane, that I think is very important for a dancer. And she hit upon it right at the start. So she insisted on Vaipat, not go and learn veena or not learn mridangam. No, you have to learn music.
What was her rapport like with the teachers and students in Kalakshetra?
She was kind of distant figure, actually. She wasn't there. I was not there when she was taking the early classes. Like you'd see pictures of her and Chandru Anna. Bhavajan, is that picture of her teaching this Gauri Party? Just go back to Gauri Party. I have a feeling that might be, I don't know who that, but I suspect it might be Chokalingam Pillai. But Gauri Party was this wonderful, wonderful Devdas. You couldn't teach, but she would show beautifully how to do certain things. And I still remember learning this ekkal from her. It was just that little thing. I mean, that itself was a gem. If you could get that transferred to your dance. I mean, doing it is one thing, but to use it in a padam, that is, you don't see that now. Attami also is going, that's another matter. But little nuances like this, the aritham in the wrist, it's not different from Kathak or ballet where the wrist is used. We also have it, but we have become somewhat casual, and the mudras have become very loose on our hands now. But Atte was very insistent on these little things. Gauri Pati Pandra pare. Pare, seriya pare. Engendha varudhu adu kattukano. Because she wouldn't be able to verbalize it, but she would show it. And you'd see, and her eyes were in a very bad way at that time. She had a problem, and her eyes were almost closed all the time. Ana adilenda the bhavam vandu paru, unbelievable. It was really something to see. I feel very blessed that I saw that. This is him teaching her how to. Can you come to that picture where Chandruana and this is her family? 1 second. So this is this is not all of them, but this is some of them. Visalakshi, her eldest sister, I think, was astoundingly beautiful, but a very distant person. This family was a very special family. You have to know that. Every one of them had this inner, the thing that we talked about. All of them had it. The only person was Vishalakshi, who perhaps was naughty. She was, even when I met her when she was 85 in Bangalore, when I started writing the book, she was full of that naughtiness, and she had that thing. And she said she mimicked everybody. She was very much also part of drama, but Visalakshi, Shivakamu Atte was very, and Yagnaraman was he was instrumental actually in getting her the Vadyas, encouraging her to start Kalakshetra. He was very, very instrumental. He was a physics person. The brothers were mostly into physics and things like that. They became very eminent later in various fields. But his interest in this was, he's the one who took her for the kacheris. She had to be escorted. And he was the one who said, the rendu sisters, the Kalyani sisters, this was her notations, how she wrote. So this is what I'm saying, that, I don't think this would have been there earlier, but she was putting things down. She was writing the sahityam. Adukadila and the bomme potu, adukadila and the takadimiya takita enna, what was the splitting of the line, what was the meaning, what is the obvious meaning, then what is the underlying implied meaning. And then hands that she felt she could introduce. So it would all be there. This is not, it ran into, and of course, Mani Maniya, this kind of handwriting is really something very special. You could make out who she was. Her love for animals was not only instinctive, but also why the animals came and sat on her shoulder. She was so still sometimes that one of the last pictures I have, which Raghavendra Rao had taken of her, he was looking for her. He went to her house. He told me this personally. And when he went to the house, she was sitting at the back facing the Adaya River in a kind of rough patch. She was sitting on a stone. And it was like she was in a kind of communication with this parrot, this one. And she was just, she didn't even know he was there when he took these pictures. He's done a whole series of these where he moves very slowly around her, and she was just totally absorbed with this parrot as though she was talking to it, and she wasn't fondling it as much as she was communicating with it. And there are pictures of her where it's on her shoulder and she's just looking at it, or she's so she had a very definite communication with animals. I don't think she cuddled them or petted them or things like that. But she had even with an elephant, you'd see there's something happening there. You can see it in the picture. I wasn't witness to it, but I knew her the way she would say to us, these animals, you have to feed them, you have to look after them. If you don't do that, who's going to do it? But what actually irked her was the way the bullock carts, the people, how they were treated and how they were whipped and how they were not fed and how their injuries were not seen to. And also she did a lot of that. Anywhere in this area, she was very active with that personally. She would stop the car, get down, take the animal. They started the Blue Cross. They were part of that whole movement. Otherwise, she'd take her to the clinic, take the animal to the clinic inside the TS and see that it was treated. That led to the passing of the bill later, which actually was torture for her, because what Jawaharlal Nehru said to her, she submitted it once and they threw it out because they said that she hadn't done her research. And she went back and Jawaharlal Nehru said to her, you have to go to all the abattoirs in India and check on the condition of and report it in the bill. Otherwise, we can't. And that was what was, she was resisting that because she just couldn't think of going to see the way that they were slaughtered for meat. And you can imagine what the condition of those were at that time, even now. But at that time, and she personally talked to so many of us about it when she was sick. She became physically sick to see how and she said, I could see the tears in their eyes just before they passed. So, of course, that was not part of the bill, but what she had to do was make it a practical bill, which ultimately is still today the only bill passed on animal welfare in India. So she received a lot of flack for it because the dance community said that she was chosen to represent them, or chosen because of her dance as an artist to be in this, in this as a member of parliament. But what is she doing with animals and nothing for dance? So she got a lot of flack from that as well. And she said, I don't think you'll need me as much as they do. Very well known that she spoke. She said that, and they were very upset with her. And there were a lot of Maharajas who were part of the early members of parliament as well, because they lost their purses and they were made part of the early. And she would be invited to a banquet where they would be sitting across from her, and she would be given her vegetarian food and they would be served. And she very famously said to them that, why are you eating this? I heard you have so many animals in your state. And he was bragging and saying, I have 117 dogs and I have so many, elephants and so many horses. And he says, are they your friends? He said, yes. He says, why are you eating your friends? And he was very insulted. He was very upset. He didn't like the way she spoke to him. Because, she was always dressed as this very orthodox South Indian woman. And she's saying these things to us. I mean, I think they were insulted at various levels. She was a woman, she was a widow, she was a good South Indian girl, she was an artist. What has she got to do with this? But this was her. She was very, very vocal about it. But certainly, I don't think she was rude, but she was very firm. She said, well, why would you eat your friends? You look after them in one side, and the other side you're... Oh, she was... I don't think she had a very smooth run. I think she faced hurdles all through her life. Yeah. Are we overstepping our time? Yes?
We'll talk about her dance drama, Saka.
Yes. Okay.
So I would rather sit gaping, thinking of how these 25 dance dramas came into being.
Yeah.
How did the creative process happen? Was there a particular format that she followed? How did it happen? Reading texts discussing with
Yeah,
musicians.
you see, she had grown up in the TS again. You have to see what the background of it was. Grown up in the TS, where a lot of Sanskrit scholars had come there and were residing there to actually deal with ancient Indian texts, which was Annie Besant's passion. Annie Besant herself translated the Bhagavad Gita. It's a very, very good translation. But they were doing various texts. So she was used to that. She knew that, this is the way you approach things. So there were also people in Kalakshetra who had already been gathered together to look at ancient texts and to look at the Abhinay to look at the Natya Shastra, to look at these various things. And so the Ramayanam, which she was attracted to, she had already started with that and decided to do that. And then other stories started coming up and they were researched and people brought them to her. And then she had these wonderful veteran musicians there and she said, you do this and can you compose that? And, so, and Papanas and Shivan, he just adored her. She loved his work and she asked him to do, of course, what beautiful work compositions. He's done the whole Andal Charitram and so many others. M.D. Ramanathan actually was persuaded by her to do the whole Buddhavataram, which is something that he would never have delved into. And I think it's an absolute sacrilege that all these wonderful full-length drama, the music has not been shared with the rest of the world. The sense, if you saw the drama, you'd hear the music. But frankly, when you're looking at M.D. Ramanathan's, for instance, or Tiger's, kritis and all, you say that, oh, this kriti we've missed and that we've lost and all. But look at this, you have here, not less than 35 full-length compositions, which come from the same source. They should be, if not the dance, but the music can be or should be shared, I think, personally. It's just me. I may be wrong, but I think it is a wealth that is lying hidden. It's just, and probably die because if you don't do the drama, then the music is dead. The music should live independently of the drama, is what but I'll be hung for it, actually. So I would say that I didn't say that. You can see her. So if there were some Romanians there and Polish people there and English women, everybody joined in her mad forays in drama and theatre. We think we are doing, new stuff, but they did whatever. And they learned the various forms. And one of them would have known, and then they would join in. And she was always at the center of it all. Never hesitated to be something else or, do something else. Yeah. They just happened because she was a good storyteller. And I think she was, in some ways, she felt that she was not the maker of them, but just an instrument through which it flowed. She said that very often. She said, I don't know how it happened. In fact, when she finished the Ramayanam, I was very much there for that. And when we first presented the Mahabharata-abhishekam, and then it was first night and second night and third night, and then we had to keep doing it because it became such a, everybody, had heard about it and wanted to see it. And at that time, I remember the people talking to her and saying, "Ipadi panninga." She was actually bemused by the question. She said, it just happened. It just, yeah. So I don't think she took too much, she didn't take it too seriously that she was the maker or the choreographer, the way we now say, I'm a choreographer of that. She didn't say that. She just was happy that it was there and that the young people were doing it well. And her mother also was, mother was 98 or something, but she would come and sit in the front and not sit on the chairs or anything. She would sit with the children in the front. And we'd be taking these main roles. And I remember Janardana played Rama and all. And after the program party, she was being helped up. I want to meet the Rama and Sita. And she came and she just and these children were no. And Atte was saying, and she just, she just went so taken by the, the storyline and the whole thing. She felt that her daughter had brought him alive again. She was like that. I think the family had that intrinsic devotion. And
was it also this sense of lightness that sort of allowed her to continue with her creative pursuits, even though she went through a lot of stirrings from the external
she was
world?
very busy with various movements at that time. We hardly saw her. So my suspicion is that when she came back to the institute after traveling somewhere with Vegetarian Congress. She was the president of the International Vegetarian Congress. She was the president of the Animal Welfare Board. She was, busy with various projects, the whole weaving and dyeing. She was reviving that. And there were so many things that she was handling that when she came back, my suspicion is that she wants something that she can hold on to and keep her there for the next 2-3 months, so that then there was just the jatis and the swaras and things that she made her happy, And then she was just there. Then she wouldn't be distracted. That part of her diary was just the compositions and the thing. And she had met Tagore. She wanted to do one of Tagore's work. She did Sharma. She got the musicians from Bengal. She did the Kuruvanjis. She was very close to the Melatur Bhagavatamela family, so she did the Melatur dramas as well. She did, and Sitarama Sharma was there by then, and so that whole input, genuine people were there with their inputs, and people were coming and giving her sahitya by then from various temples. So then she wouldn't take just like that. I mean, it had to be an intuition, or it had to be approved by the scholars and said that this one is better, this Kuruvanji is better than that, or that is better than this. But what is the import of that? What is the literary value of this? That my kind of homework also was being done. But I don't think she was, she would leave it to the scholars to advise her about that. And then she would take a call. But Partilla, she would take a direct interest in. She would veto some ragas. And Rajaram sir has told us how Vasudevacharya, the very first opening song of the Ramayana, he made it in one raga, and they were going to Tirupati to sing before the Lord, and he wanted to sing it. Then she heard it and she said, quietly, Raga Matamudiman. And oh, Mathurane, அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு, then it of course was changed. So she, I think that either intuitive or some daring, but also intuitive. Yeah.
Can we take some questions?
Yes, please.
Would you like to ask Akka some questions?
I'm not an authority, I have to tell you that. As you know, I'm just... nobody did this work, so I did it. I was I felt very bad that nobody had done it. Yes.
Just curious, did Rukmini Jeevitha have any interaction with the Dhanammal family?
With the Dhanammal family, I'm sure she had met them. She was very much with Bala Saraswati. They had met and all. Unfortunately, there were some officials in government, especially in the Sangeet Nat Academy at that time, who tried to make them position them as opposing energies for the Bharatanatyam world. Actually, they were two parts of the same coin, and if that had not happened and people had not encouraged, I think there was some misgiving on the part of we all know about that, about part of the traditional Devadasis. But she was in absolute admiration of their work, but she wasn't that person. And she loved their capacity. I mean, there's no comparison in terms of her ability to perform the way they did, or the way that they delved into their padams and javalis. I think she was very conscious of of that, and she was in admiration of them. She started learning only because she saw the Devadasis perform. So I don't think there was any animosity between her and Balama, for instance, or that family, for sure, never. But there were people who were then, making it a controversy, unfortunately. Even to this day, I sometimes wonder about that. I think even if you take folk forms that impressed Bharatanatyam, after all, there are folk movements that must have been adopted. Because when you say dance dramas or performances in the village temple, then there were many other types of artists and types of genres of dance that were also கூத்து இது அது எல்லாம் நிறைய இருந்தது. So that they were not impressed by each other, or that they were very clearly demarcated. I don't think that was the case. So similarly, I feel that the new intelligent approach, or the sensitive approach, or the philosophical approach to the arts, you can't say that our arts are devoid of philosophy. I don't think even the Devadasi would say that, because they were dancing in the temple, and it was a dedication. But there was another way of looking at it, that's all. And I think Rukmini Devi fulfilled that role of looking at it in a way that was more spiritual than religious, or was less ritualistic, but more, the journey of every Jivatma, not just one clan of people, but every Jivatma, all of us, had that opportunity to express ourselves through this Sahitya. I don't like to even talk about that, because it's such a absolute non-starter for me, frankly. I just feel, because the same questions come up again and again, and the same issues come up, and they really undermine her intelligence, her sensitivity, and the massive amount of work that she's done. If you tell me that all those 35 dance dramas and all those varnams, all those padams, javalis, and all that she set for kalakshetra are devoid of Shringaram, then I'd have to say that I don't agree, because we all learnt our Shringaram and our Bhakti Bhavam from there. I revived one of her varnams in Yadukula Kamboji during the COVID, the very first one that she did, which actually nobody had seen since then. And I kept asking all the teachers and Vadhyars, all my seniors, where is this Yadukula Kamboji Varnam? And they said, she did it. Engalukku theriyadu. So where did it go? How did it go? Anyway, managed to revive it, because all her notes were there. And in her notes, for one line, she describes the erotic part of that line, and she writes her hand on the snakes, two snakes making love. I mean, that philosophically also I can see where she got it, because the snake is a very, very elevated symbol of the highest form of eroticism, but also very high form of beauty, of art. And we've actually revived that hand also, where she talks very explicitly about that erotic nature of that expression of love. So I don't think she was shy of it in any way. But she dealt with so many other emotions, So this question of Shringara and Bhakti is actually, I think we shouldn't even get into it, because there are far too many other bhavas. It's like these are the only two things that exist. No way. It's the like everything in life, we talk about love or no love, but actually there's so many shades of love. It's, Vatsalya Rasam, there's towards a husband, towards a lover, towards a father. So there's always this thing of those various shadings, the Vyabhichari bhavas that we call. Sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're jealous, sometimes you're indifferent, sometimes you're fed up. all part of Shringaram, all part of loving that same person. And that is much, much more interesting, actually, because that's more human and it's more evocative than just Shringaram. Shringaram cannot last on its own. Pure love, even with another person, can't last on its own without any other. There has to be respect and there has to be admiration. There has to be give and take. There has to be, so many things. So I think she understood that also. Because in her dance dramas, there was just too much variation to be dealing only with this or that. But the Shringara scenes, I can tell you that she would personally go through it with you. When I did Shakuntala, she was critical of something I did, and then I remember when I played Radha for Geet Govindam, she said, "Nanna irundhathu, ana nee Balagopalo nee vandu inik poi Shankarman." The next day was the show. And this was at the end of the final rehearsal where she came and she sat and she watched the whole thing like this. And she called us and she said, "Nanna irundhathu, ana na vandu I'll ask Appuni to teach you the real essence of who Radha was." I said, I thought I was ready. But then that day we spent, or the next morning, I think we spent nearly 2 hours with him, where he talked of who Radha actually is and what her essential role is in this thing with Sri Krishna. So she could be happy at one level, but then there was other levels that she would trying to say to us that, those other levels can be an aspiration for you as an artist. You might want to think of those as well. I don't think it applied to what I did that the next day, but I definitely learned a huge lesson that day. Huge. Is that it's never enough. You have to go beyond that. There are worlds that rise above these very obvious worlds.
And would given a chance, would you ask her, because she's very rich in literature as well, do you ask her to write an autobiography of herself?
Sorry?
Because she's also very rich in literature. Would you ask her to
Rukmini
write?
Devi? Yeah.
Would you ask her, given if we go back, travel back, do you ask her to write an autobiography?
Ask her to write an autobiography?
Yeah.
About who?
About herself.
About?
Herself.
Many people had already asked her to do that. She was not at all interested in it. And the fact of the matter is that many people also offered to write a biography of hers. Also, and she actually, with 1 or 2 people, she spent hours. I think one person had about 12 hours of, questions and answers that she answered for her over a period of time or more. Just disappeared, all that material. Never happened. And it was Shankaramanan who said to me, I don't have any time left because there was that accident and things like that. So he said, but somebody has to do this. Why don't you do it while I'm still alive so that I can guide you? So he actually helped me through the early, he would leave me free to do all the research work and then come back to him and ask him questions and things like that. So he was a bit of a guide, more than a guide in that. He also kept pushing me. நான் இருக்கிறச்சே நீ இது பண்ணா நன்னா இருக்கும் அப்படின்னு. But it didn't happen when he was alive, but it came out. Yeah. She wasn't interested in herself.
But it was inspiring. It is a lesson for all of us to learn. Be like her.
Oh yeah. In fact, I have to say this to all of us Indians, that we are quite unmindful of the amazing Atmas that have contributed to this country. We don't have little biographies written on them, and this is maybe a little large one, but even just minimalistic ones, especially people who fought for the freedom struggle, but also so many other women in the villages who revived things, and everybody. I'm not talking about only the known names. I'm talking about people. We are not making them into the heroes of our nation and the heroines of our nation, and it's because we don't write biographies and we don't care. I think we also don't care. Even these few people who are, I mean, they are the guiding lights of Balama or a Rukmini Devi, or so many of them. I don't want to mention any, just in case I miss somebody. But I'm saying not just in dance, but in everything. We actually are now pulling them down, so that many of you have misconceptions about their contribution. I don't think they were not human. They were very human. They had their faults. They had their, they must have had misgivings. They were working against a society that was really not helping them, to do the things they wanted to do. Not just the women, I'm talking about even men. But they fought. They did what they had to do. They became the heroes of our time. We don't take inspiration from them enough. Who do we have that inspires us in the dance world, for instance? And yet I only hear things about Rukmini Devi that are so unmindful of her contribution. You worry about whether she was this. Somebody said to me that the other day, one of my own students came and asked me, she threw out all the natvanas, is it? Where did that come from? You've obviously heard it from your pals who talk like that, very callously about these figures whom you don't have any business to be looking at unless you look at it properly and, check on the historical period, check on what happened before and after, how old were they when they left, what age did they come in, did they go of their own volition, but the fact is that they were all setting up their own institutions, because when Kalakshetra became, they saw children coming in there, they would start their own, like Dandapani Pillai. He was teaching there, but he soon started his own institution and became Vadyar for Jayalalitha, Venirad and Nirmala, this one, that one. He didn't need to be stuck being a poor teacher in Kalakshetra anymore. So they also moved on because it became, the tide had turned. So they had made their own choices. But people should look at it historically, not just comment or pass. I find young people passing very, back comments. No. Yeah, I think you should be more grateful for whatever little they did. And she didn't do little. Incredible if we are all there, it's because of her. That is without doubt. All the dancers must acknowledge that. Sure.
I feel like often we don't realize the greatness of the moment we're in, or the uniqueness of the opportunities we've been presented. But reading this book, like the names that kept coming, these are all names that I've grown up like learning Carnatic music. These are names we are taught to respect, and
yes.
But that's also the beauty of hindsight, understanding the value that these legends have given us. Do you think you and other early students at Kalakshetra realized kind of the uniqueness of that moment and of the people brought to the institution?
I think they were, such special people that you could not but be your hands came together before you even if you saw them at a distance, and you moved back or to the side. You never stood in front of them. They were very, 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 pahuncha hua atmas. They were not normal people. So when we went to Budulur Krishnamurti Shastrikal's class, we were 14, 15. I mean, can you imagine? If you think of it, it's such a waste that he's taking a class for this group of senior dance students because Atte asked him to. But he was such a good Vadyar. I mean, if you have a Vadyar, you must have a, or Ramaswamy Iyengar sir. Such wonderful Vadyars they were. I often tell this story, but that's not about the music teaching. Budulur sir came all the way from Adyar with his wife would give him a little dabba. It was not bigger than this, with his idlis for that, because he would be in Thiramur the whole day. Naanga inge class mudichittu, we would go have a nice hearty meal. The food was really good there. We would eat well, come back, and then we would have part class. And he would say, "Ayyo பாவம் நீங்கெல்லாம் அம்மா அப்பா எல்லாம் விட்டுட்டு நீங்க இங்க வந்திருக்கேள், என்ன கொடுத்தாங்க உங்களுக்கு சாப்பிட? நன்னா இருக்காதுல்ல, உனக்கு வச்சிருக்கேன்." And he'd open his dabba, only those 2 idlis which he came with, he would share it with us. He would give it to us, and he would go back hungry probably. But that, because he felt that we were without our, far away from our homes. நீ எங்கேருந்து வந்திருக்கோ? ஐயோ, நீ அங்கேருந்து வந்திருக்கியா? நீ எங்கேருந்து? இவ்வளோ தூரமா வந்து he would do this kind of thing, and then he would just give away what he had. And now when I think of it, God, why would he do something like that? I'd feel so bad, But that was them. They were generous to a fault. They were there all the time. You're talking about, having a teacher who just stays there, sits there, doesn't move from there. They had their cottages and they were just there. You could come any time, and till any time you could just keep asking them something or learning from them. That's what she created. She knew that these elderly Vadyars were the ones who would give generously because their lives were, it was over, actually. Yeah. Choluma?
No, so as you mentioned that she started her journey with dance at a much later stage, and yet she achieved so much. I was just wondering, would it have been different if she started at a much younger age, or was that time away from dance and exposure to other things a integral part of the work
I think every part of her journey was very important for the person she ultimately became. Yes. That time with her mother and father was very special. Her time in the interiors of Tamil Nadu was very special for her because she learned to value her culture in a way that can put back that light back place. So that was very important. Her exposure to the Theosophical Society and to these very, almost not only philosophical but esoteric even conversations that maybe they didn't hear everything, but J. Krishnamurti also he was also a child with same age, same time, everything. So they were running around and they would pick up these things and somebody would teach them something but they saw these things, heard these things that took them to another dimension. The whole freedom struggle was another thing that completely enwrapped them, or certainly her. She was absolutely pulled into that whole thing of, doing things for the country and for the children of this country rather than for herself. So she didn't want to be that dancer or that musician. So I think all these phases were very important for her. Her brother Sriram was involved in that whole thing. Her father and mother, great teachers. Arundale was one of the wisest and funniest, and she talked of him as being, somebody who was so sensitive, and he wasn't an artist himself, but he realized that she was attracted to this music and she would want to know more about it. And so when she wanted to do ballet, he'd let her do ballet. Many people in the TS said, why is she learning ballet in Australia? She went there to learn theosophy from Leadbeater, so there was always there were always people against what she was doing, but he said, go on. So he encouraged it. So these were good teachers, great teachers. So when she started the institute, she had all that, idealism in place. She had the the Western approach, the Indian approach to art and plays. She wanted to sing these songs. She wanted to dance these songs. She believed in them, and she knew that this is what she should do. She should hand this over to the children of the new India, and that's what she did. That's what she did.
Akka, uh, do you see dance, Bharatanatyam, since Rukmini Devi's time, evolving in some direction?
Sorry?
Evolving in some direction.
Yes, many directions.
Costume.
Many, everything. This is that form that seems to do everything. Sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, now children have so much opportunity to listen to music. They have so many things at their command. So do you see them making good use of it? Do you think it could be better? Do you think learning avenues for performance could be better for dancers? Something that can be done?
I think each one is doing very different things. And it's because their sanskara, their application, the time they have in hand, their dedication or lack of it sometimes, their distraction and lack of it sometimes. So they have many more things. Unlike us, when we decided to join Kalakshetra, then we were just like this for 15 years. But today they want to be a doctor as well, and they want to also do Bharatanatyam, and they want to finish their Arangetram and then get married and have a couple of kids, and they also want to, and they have to. I mean, they're also drawn into a normal life. So this struggle is there in all of them, and they are all managing as well as they can. I think they're very intelligent, very sensitive human beings. They're also people who've been exposed much more. So in that sense, they have the facility to make a call on, how much or how little they'll do, or how much or how little they'll research, or how much or how little they're going to look at the aspect of the music. Or should I'm so busy working on my own body, how can I even, Akka, I'm not bothered with the music, let them do. So there are some who do and some who don't. And I can totally understand each of those journeys, because it's very different for each of us. It depends on who has time, at what stage of their career. Many of them want to just be a dancer. It's like in the West, you lend your body to a teacher to make you into this wonderful dancer, and then you just want to dance. You don't have to worry about your costume, your, the work itself, the choreography. It's all coming from great masters or big companies or this or that, and they see to everything, including your survival. Everything is looked after. All you have to do is dance. You've got to watch that body and see that you're in trim all the time. No, it's not like that for us. From choosing your costume to deciding on which sahityam you're going to choose, deciding which musicians you'll have, who is going to take advantage of you, do you have enough money to pay them? You're worried about so many things that almost I feel that it takes away from their engagement or conversation with themselves, which is the ultimate conversation should be with the self, because ultimately that's what shows in all the items that you do. It's how much you've gone into your own resources and into your reading and your watching something or listening to something or exposure, But they also want to be with the Joneses, and they want to be what other people are doing, speak like other people speak. So there's some bit of casualness, and which is different from our world. So they're living in many worlds, I think, now. There's the weird world, and there's the college world, or the society world, where they are somebody else, and then they come to the dance class and they're somebody else. And I think they play these roles actually quite, you have to give them credit for playing them very well, actually. Most of them. It's very hard, very hard. So I don't pass judgment on them. I try not to, because it's really, I'm not in their shoes, so I can't say of them. It's very hard, very hard. So I don't pass judgment on them. I try not to, because it's really, I'm not in their shoes, so I can't say. And where they're coming from. Some come from very humble homes in the interior still, where their parents are still actually very doubtful about them coming to Chennai and learning Bharatanatyam. And so they don't mind them going to MJR Janaki or to, no, seriously, to get a degree. But they're not going to be dancers. It's just that degree. அது பரவாயில்ல பட் வாத்தியார்கிட்ட போய் கற்றுக்கிறது they've heard too many stories and they don't the last thing they want is them to become a dancer, because then kalyanam இதெல்லாம் போயிடும். So yeah, oof. Not an easy life. Yes.
Can you share some memorable moments with Ate?
One of my earliest memories is of her. She, so I'm saying that she lived in Delhi often, and she went to abroad to Huizen, where she was heading the Theosophical Center there, and she went to Australia. She did so between a theosophical work and this and that, and at the national level, people were calling her for the Sangeet Natak Academy meetings and things like that. They all tapped into her because she was such a big figure. But I think she was happiest when she came back home, and then she would, she would say to Dr. Padmasini, "Iniki na korandeyoda saapra poren." So she'll come to the dining hall, and if Shankar Menon or any of the others said, "Nangalum varo," it's not a party. This is me and them. No, nobody's coming. So somehow they had to leave her there in the hostel area, and then she would come and sit with us, and then afterwards, she would say, இப்போ நீங்க எல்லாம் mimicry எல்லாம் பண்றீங்களா? Then we'd slowly start, and we'd say, சரி அத்தை இது யாருன்னு சொல்லுங்க. Then we'd imitate one teacher, and she said, she enjoyed it so much, this play acting and talking to us, and she would, the other memory, so that hostel thing with us, that little bonding, breaking the ice, because she was such a formidable figure. Nobody wanted to sit next to her, and one of the hostel wardens, so one person here, but usually the youngest would go, the seniors would never go because they were so. So I remember those times, but she would just be her normal self, and she said, "The rasam nanna irka, unakku pidichada?" Uppu kammiya irukkur maadhiri. This kind of very, I think it healed her. And then she would also do this other slightly more formal thing where she would say she wanted to meet the students in kalakshetra, but without the teachers. And then she would sit with them, and she would sit with us, and it was wonderful because class was stopped. Atte had come back from, Europe, and she was wanting to talk about that. Sometimes she'd let the teachers be there, and she just talked very casually for about 2 hours about, I have this friend in Europe. She inherited this property, and she's growing. She doesn't. So she would tell us about how, this woman didn't grow things, but ate off the land only. So it was natural, whatever grew naturally. So there were trees and bushes. She said, "Inge paambu irukka, adhe irukku, ana adu vechinde avanga vandu saappaanga, enakkum kodutanga." So she would live with her for a few days, and then there was other woman who was clairvoyant, and she brought her back with her. She was like a gypsy. She had hair and something coming out. When we would see her coming to prayers, we would be wondering, it's absolutely amazing. So either from Poland or Czechoslovakia, and this woman would come, and she could see auras around us. So she talked to us about this whole thing of clairvoyancy and auras and all. And then after that, she would tell us, "You see, there's a slightly red haze around you. I think there's a little anger there." And we thought this was absolutely, amazing. Such amazing people. They were so maverick and so off the chart, because her friends who were theosophists were all off the charts in Europe. They were people who were doing very non-conformist livelihoods. They followed their natural instincts. That was their theosophy. So she had friends like that. They were quite amazing. Some who never spoke at all. They'd come and sit at assembly and never, like her eldest brother was very maunam. He would never talk at all. So it was big learning experiences for us, watching these people. And yeah, she then seemed normal by comparison. I think she loved being with the children. She loved coming back to her music, her dance, composing that jati, letting it tickle and tease her till she got it right. அது ஒரு தனிய நமக்கு சாப்பாடு இல்ல அது. It's like, what would I do if I didn't have that? And now I can understand that. That time maybe I didn't. So to answer your question, we may not have been very conscious, but I think we knew we were in the midst of greatness. Most of them were really, the time that I studied, I was very fortunate. They were really very great Atmas, really, seriously. Chandupanikar, Ashan, all of them, everyone who came, it's almost like an aura around them. They were so old that they were so fond of us. We were excused for everything. The senior boys or they would be a little harsh. But with us girls, it was always so kind. And then Atte was always talking about kindness and saying, don't be harsh on them. Teach them. Tell them nicely. They'll learn. So she had 3 big mottos. One was education without fear, because she grew up in fear of her teachers. So that was her big thing. That was, I think, the first thing that she coined. Art without vulgarity. And she meant it because she saw the vulgarity in art. So art without vulgarity, and beauty without cruelty, because the beauty products, even just the simple soaps that were being made, were all being made by killing animals, huge sea mammals and things like that. She knew all about that because she was head of the International Animal Welfare Board. So she knew where the products were coming from. And she kept telling us, you cannot trust that there's... Her husband, who was diabetic and died early, he didn't have the medicine for diabetes because it came from an animal. There was a component which he knew was coming from killing of an animal. He never had it. He died a very torturous death, actually. But he stood on that principle that I will not have that if it is at the... So they were... அதான் சொல்றேன், ஏதோ out of this normal rung of people. You can't help but be inspired by that.
Thank you, Akka, for